Hello and welcome to Produced By. Just quickly before we begin, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting it by joining our Patreon. You can choose from a list of memberships and will receive some exciting rewards. Thank you, and back to the episode.
And when you worked at MPC, you said you worked as a coordinator, right?
Yes.
So you didn't want to work as artist because you studied compositing? So how come you
Yes,
ended up...
Yeah, I missed the gap. So when I was headhunted for production. I don't know. I guess the people around me could see.
You didn't mind switching to production side from artistic one?
So working on that final project, I had my producer hat on as well as my compositing hat, and I guess I found a newfound love for project management. I was always hyper fixated on naming conventions. This needs to be in this specific folder. This needs to be done on this specific due date. And as you know, that is just production to a T. That is pretty much it. So when I believe I was asked a question, which was, did you enjoy producing, etc.? And I feel like that question just unlocked a new chapter for me, which was, yeah, I actually really did enjoy producing. And I think me just answering that question alone enticed people to communicate with that factor with me. And also the fact of I wasn't choosy as a university student that was coming out of university. I don't think I had the luxury potentially of being like, no, I don't want to do production.
Yeah.
If if the job's being offered to me and it's in a company that's really good, has great credibility, I think take it and then see if you can navigate into another route.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, other people have probably had different experiences, but I feel like that's a good way to go.
But it's something that I've been thinking about since the beginning. I was thinking, where did come that moment, or did I miss something? Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. I apologize. It was definitely headhunted by the head of production of MPC, who was able to understand my explanation of the production skills that I used. It was essentially my public speaking of production that essentially brought me into production.
And are there any projects exciting that you worked on in MPC and you can talk about, or maybe enjoyed, or want to share?
Good question. I worked on, I think one of the most interesting ones, in my personal opinion, that I worked on is Halo, the TV show. And I would say it's interesting because it was extremely CG heavy, which was fun to work with, as it's a slightly different pipeline. Like working in visual effects, your pipeline needs to adapt to the necessity of the movie that you're making. So meaning that if it's CG heavy, it needs to adapt. If it's 2D heavy, meaning that it's mostly film, photography and cinematically filmed images, then you'd be focused on that. So that was fun, especially I think it's one project that people actually recognize my name in credits, which I think is interesting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is very surprising. I do get random, I think my friends, I say mostly guys who play Halo, who've watched the TV show, will randomly message me like, is this your last name? Did you work on this? I'm like, yeah, I actually did. So that's quite cool.
So what did it feel like when you saw your name in the credits? It must have been exciting.
I didn't. So funny story of that. The first time I ever got a credit, I'm not too sure if it was Halo. I honestly, sadly, can't remember which scenario it was, but I do remember I never saw it for a while. I just remember I got a message from my friend, the same friend that works at EA Sports, coincidentally, and he just said, "Oh, your credits are here," and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I have no idea what you're talking about."
It's someone with
And
the
he
same
screenshotted.
name.
Yeah, literally, he screenshotted it, and I was like, "Oh wow, I have a credit." And the first thing I did was send it to my family. I thought it was quite cool, such an achievement. I didn't think to post it on LinkedIn till everyone was like, "Post it on LinkedIn." And then that's what I did. So it was just more of I've took it as more of like a personal achievement, more of a family moment, more of like
Yeah.
a celebration of small wins, and nothing more than that, I guess. I'm not, and I need to work on celebrating my own wins. That's something I should need to work on.
Don't want to flex.
Yeah, just a little bit. So
Mhm.
that's something I definitely have to work on.
Yeah. And can you also try to introduce the role that you had of the production coordinator? What is it
Oh
that you
yeah.
do on a daily basis?
So a production coordinator, I would say it can the role can change depending on the studio. And also there's varieties of role. So there's a show production coordinator, senior production coordinator, and a coordinator in general. I would say focusing on as a production coordinator at MPC, so let's say a junior, I was talking to artists every single day. So one thing that you do is called rounds, which is talking to every single artist who's in your either department or in your show, depending on how big the team that you've been assigned to. So it could be your entire show, which was my circumstance many occasions at MPC. So I was a coordinator for the entirety of a show, or you
Sounds
could just
like a
be
lot
in a
of
department.
artists to look after.
Oh yeah, so many artists.
Mm.
Yeah, but to be honest, it was smaller scale shows. So
Mhm.
sometimes the equivalent would be the same amount of people in one department, to be honest.
Yeah.
So you could be on a show or a department and you'd have to speak to every single person and essentially just find out what they're doing today. And most importantly, ETAs. I think the biggest thing about production is ETAs, ETAs, ETAs. When's it coming? When's it going to be done? Why is it going to take this long? Why is there a delay? And then passing that information down to your direct next, the next person in line. So, for example, I say that because in some studios it could be a line producer, and in some studios it could be a production manager.
Mhm.
So, essentially, passing that information down and keeping the databases as to whatever you use up to date with all that necessary information. Um, it then also includes chasing a lot. So, as I explained, there's a pipeline when it comes to visual effects. So, meaning that things get passed down step by step. And you would need to say, okay, this artist says that they can't do this because they're missing this from step two. So, you need to go all the way to step two, ask
Mhm.
all the people, where's all this? And then bring it back to the artist in step five.
Yeah.
A lot of that. And I guess the best phrase would be massaging schedules. That's one of the main things that coordinators do.
Mhm.
So a schedule would usually be put into place by, again, the next person up in your team, i.e. either a line producer or a production manager, which we also call a PM. They will create a schedule, which is essentially a timeline of events of when things need to specifically happen in order to get that film on cinema screens by the designated date that the clients have already put on the bus.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, a schedule is put in place, and the coordinators will then look at the schedule and say, okay, Alisha needs to be doing this project, this task for 3 days, and then move on to this task. So just making sure that that is kept to place, and if anything needs to be changing, massaging that and adjusting it as necessary, ensuring that artists aren't overloaded. I think this is the most important thing that can often be dismissed,
Mhm.
making sure artists that aren't overloaded with work, meaning that they have up to 5 days worth of work every week, nothing more than that, making sure they actually do feel comfortable and not overworked, making sure they have the team around them, the support as necessary, and the comfortability to talk to you. So it's more. There's a lot of people management as well, which
Mhm.
is a small factor that can be overlooked sometimes, but I think it's one of the most important things, especially when working with people. I think that gives an overall gist of a production
Yeah.
coordinator.
And is there something you enjoyed in particular and maybe didn't enjoy?
Oh yeah, so I would say I definitely enjoyed the people management of it all. In the current role that I have, I don't necessarily get to talk to artists as much, so I do miss that aspect of it all. Something I didn't enjoy, I would say this is quite generic. I wouldn't necessarily say that I didn't enjoy it, but I would say working in production can be very stressful, and I feel like that's not something that should be ignored, shouldn't be told, and should be very clear about. You're coming into an industry where you are expected to work well under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to understand that you're going to be under pressure. There's going to be deadlines. There's going to be people nagging you. You are going to be the nagger. You have to nag. You have to bother people. You have to, I think I say it all the time as a production person, you need to be prepared to be as annoying as physically possible.
Yeah, I was
Like,
gonna
you
say
have to.
that you are the annoying one.
You're the annoying person. You're that person where someone's just trying to draw quietly in their room and you're knocking
Yeah.
every 3 seconds. Like, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Like, you have to be prepared to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And it can be quite stressful for you if people aren't able to communicate essentially the ETAs, or maybe when
Yeah,
something's
yeah.
done, and you just have to keep your cool a lot of times. So yeah, I
Mhm.
wouldn't say it's something I don't like, but I'd say it's something that can make the job difficult and you need to be prepared for.
Yes, yes. Yep, and after this introduction, I think was a great introduction, can you introduce the role of the line producer, which is the role that
Oh
you
yeah.
do in DNEC?
Okay, so I will say, as like a small disclaimer, this one is a little bit difficult only because it ventures into realms of two different roles. And in some studios, they have a line producer, some studios don't. Some projects need it, and some projects feel as though they don't.
Mhm.
There is a new wave of a lot of people saying line producers are an essential part of projects. But I guess everyone can have their own opinion on that based on the project that they're working on. A line producer essentially is one of the core fundamentals of the team who essentially understands the overall gist of the project. They're not client side, they're still show side. So they don't necessarily do a lot of the client setting up or client communications per se. Not to say they don't communicate with the client, but essentially we have a thing called a client report. So as you can imagine, if you have a client, you report to them. You send a report on a scheduled basis. A line producer more deals with the internal factors of the show. So making sure the internal reports are up to date so everyone in the team internally knows what's going on, as opposed to the externally. There are a lot of line producers that do work with it externally, of course, but I feel like on a traditional sense, line producers more work internally so that production managers can focus on the external attributes.
Mhm.
Meaning that we create schedules. We would be the ones to create the internal schedules to make sure that the pipeline is working. We would be the ones liaising with supervisors to ensure that the project is scheduled properly. Meaning, as I previously mentioned, if it's CG heavy, 3D heavy, effects heavy, maybe environment heavy, the project schedule is catered towards that. Sometimes we need to go step one, step two, step three, step one, step two, step one, and go back and forth, and ensuring that the schedule is reflecting that accurately so everyone has an understanding of that. It also dictates talking and communicating with coordinators, delegating tasks so they can fetch out information so you can make sure the schedule is staying correct over time. Reporting artist skill levels. I'm trying to think what else. It's a lot of project management, resource management. So making sure that you have the correct resources over time.
Mhm.
So if you initially we will create a schedule, and then that schedule would dictate potentially how many people need to work on this in order to achieve the designated deadline. So then we would report that amount of artists needed, report the designated skill set based on communicating with supervisors, and collect that resource from the necessary departments.
Mhm.
I think that's a lot of what line producers do. So
Yeah.
essentially the main difference is not communicating with each artist on a regular basis, but instead getting that information from coordinators.
And what does it take to progress from being a coordinator to become line producer?
Oh, good question. I would say it takes a lot of asking. I think that's one thing that people take for granted, which is generally just asking, hey, how do I progress? As
Hmm.
I said, every company is different, every show is different, and every department is different. So you need to figure out what is the best way within your jurisdiction for you to progress. And a lot of times in that situation, it comes down to directly asking, and also talking to, if there's a job role that you want, talk to the person in that job role. Maybe ask them, is there anything that you do that I can take off your hands to make your life easier?
Hmm.
So for one, now you're picking up job roles and specifications from that job role already, meaning that slowly you can build your portfolio and tasks that you can do from that job role. Two, asking them what they do and if they could show you something so you can learn from them. That's a good one. But I would say it takes a lot of asking.
Hmm.
It's not just you wake up one day and it's like, oh, I'm going to do this, and then nothing happens and you just kind of just
Yeah.
sit there and wait for it to
Hmm.
come to you. You have to definitely ask and then action those points.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was wondering if it's like that you need to be proactive and ask that you want to be promoted, or if there are any options, or if it works more like that someone comes to you and they tell you, oh, now it's perfect timing for you to progress, or now we need you on this project.
Yeah, I would say the first one is the best way to go forward. If you want something, never wait for it to come to you. Always go and get it, no matter the circumstance. Even if you hear from a grapevine that, hey, they're looking to promote you,
Hmm.
it doesn't matter, because things change, people change, projects change, and you can easily be forgotten. We work in very big studios, or I do, and this is a very big world regardless. So you don't want to be left behind simply because you wasn't proactive enough. There are scenarios where people do get promoted without their, I guess, being proactive, but I believe, in my experience, you have to be aware in that scenario that you are probably receiving a lot of good feedback from everyone in your team.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Not to say that's not achievable, but it's you you're put into a better situation, and it'll be work more into your favor if you actually push the agenda yourself, I would say. One thing I do say is, when you constantly ask for a promotion, or how do I get a promotion, or how do I move into the next level, yeah, you may sound annoying, but one thing you do is subconsciously keep that idea in your line manager's head.
Hmm.
So, for example, when they're in their next meeting and they hear, oh, we're going to be needing a line producer for this job, for this new project, and we don't have one, subconsciously they're going to be thinking, okay, Alicia keeps asking me that she wants to be a line producer.
Hmm.
I think it's more about implementing your agendas as opposed to just waiting for anything.
If you want to boost your online presence, check out our digital marketing agency called Trailblazed. You can also enroll in our Skillshare course called The 10 Tips on How to Succeed in Your Creative Career, which was inspired by the podcast. Lastly, make sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter called Creative Spotlight to stay up to date with the show and more. Links are in the show notes. Thanks.
Yeah, and it definitely shows that that you want to progress, that you are
Yeah.
proactive. So, makes sense and good advice. And
Yeah.
talking of positions, what will be next career step from line producer?
Good question. I'm actually very much enjoying being a line producer right now. It's I don't know, it's definitely something I really enjoy. I enjoy creating schedules. I
Hmm.
enjoy resource management. That is something I love to do. So for now, I think I'm going to stick with being a line producer. Um, and I just want to refine my skills. I think that's the next step for me. I'm currently not in a position where I'm currently looking at 5-year plans for my career,
Hmm.
but currently this year, which is I genuinely want to refine my skills as a line producer
Hmm.
and become the best line producer that I can possibly be, and then potentially see where I can go from there.
Yeah, and uh, if you are looking more into the future, have you got position in mind, let's say not 5 years, but maybe 10, 20, if you wanted
Yeah.
to be a producer or something like that? Do you know?
Honestly, no. Um, I used to. My aim used to be a producer, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm against or not for it, but I would definitely say I'm also open to other roles. For example, a project manager. Um, Maybe I will just enjoy the job role better. For me, it's all about enjoyment and what job role you enjoy the most. There's a lot of people that are coordinators because they love being a coordinator, and I
Hmm.
completely understand it. Talking to artists
Yeah.
on a more daily basis can be a lot more enjoyable. So I don't want to aim for something that I potentially may not enjoy per
Hmm.
se, but I'm not closing the doors to opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd say I'm not really sure. I'm still here
And
looking.
is there somewhere in the back of your mind that like a chance that you would go to the artistic route, or you are happy in a production side?
I get that question all the time. If anything, yes, I guess somewhere in the back of my mind, I do consider potentially going back to being an artist. I feel like we only live one life, and you shouldn't stifle yourself into just pursuing one thing because that is what you feel like you should be doing.
Mhm.
So when I'm open to all doors, I'm genuinely open to all doors. So, but again, if I was to do that, it would take a lot of sacrifices, dedication, and putting a lot of other things aside to actually up skill myself based on the level. Because as like with visual effects, systems, softwares are constantly evolving. So
Mhm.
my knowledge of artistry is probably evidently outdated. So I would need to upskill myself.
Yeah.
Which yeah, I'm not opposed to doing. So yeah, maybe one day you'll see compositing artists. I don't know.
And can you imagine if you became an artist, how easier you would make life of production coordinator because you know all the stuff from that
Yeah.
side. So it will be so much easier to work with you.
No, of course. And especially like vice versa. I do meet a lot of production people that have come from an artist background as well. And
Mhm.
you're able to just understand the artist a little bit better, give them grace, um, and be reasonable with them. But yeah, it's good to have that understanding between teams, I think, generically. No
Yeah.
matter what position you're all in, it's great to work as a team.
Hmm. And from your experience of working in DNEC, are there again some projects that for some reason you can or you want to mention?
Um, I can't say any upcoming projects or any projects that I'm currently working on or have worked on in the last year or so, unfortunately. But I can say, I guess the last project that I worked on, just for any that care, would be Fast and Furious 10, which was
Mm.
great experience. Yeah, working alongside supervisors such as Pete Chang, and yeah, it was great. It was really
Hmm.
fun. Again, quite CG heavy. Um, and it was just a fun experience. You can imagine it's Fast and Furious, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it was
And
very fast and very furious.
and as someone who's working in this industry, have you got maybe a dream project because of its whether VFX or specific director or some saga that you would want to be part of?
Okay, so I guess this kind of does branch into where do I see myself in the future? I have been potentially contemplating animation.
Mm.
Maybe not permanent, but I would love to work on an animated series or film, simply because I love animation. I think animated content is the content I consume the absolute most of. I've probably watched every adult animation possible. Um, so yeah, I think it would be quite cool.
Do you
That's
want to
pretty
share
much it,
some
really. So,
specific favorite films or series?
oh gosh, I guess top. recommendations would be South Park. Again, I'm a complete and yeah. So I like South Park. I think The Simpsons are great, of course. You have
Uh-huh.
Family Guy, American Dad.
Oh yeah.
I recently completely watched Gravity Falls,
Mhm.
which to me does not feel like a children's show, which I thought was really great. Um, F is for Family has some crude content in there, so pre-warning. That's really good as well.
Mhm.
BoJack Horseman, um, quite dark humor, quite very dark.
Yeah.
Can be a bit triggering for people, I would say, but definitely a very, very good watch. Especially if you enjoy, I guess, reminiscent content. Um, so yeah, I like a lot of animated series, and I think everyone loves Rick and Morty lately. I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
a
Yeah, of
crowd
course.
favorite. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
was I
that's
was I was expecting more like I don't know, Pixar movies or something like that.
oh no. I like Pixar movies, but I prefer like adult
Yeah.
animated entertainment.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, Pixar movies are cool, just not necessarily my cup of tea.
Yeah, yeah. And before we move on, because I want to ask you about your experience with
Yeah.
Access VFX as well. But is there
Yeah.
something from your career in either MPC or DNAC that you want to share and I didn't ask?
Um, no, I feel like we covered most of it, honestly. Like the journey, how I got there, and what each role I was specifically doing, and how I got the promotion per se. Yeah, I feel like we
Hmm.
covered most of it.
Yeah. So as we will find out, Alisha has been on some podcasts already, which I will link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about your experience? Where were you on a podcast? How did you get there? And Access VFX and you?
Yeah, of course. So I have found a newfound passion for public speaking, which I do very much enjoy. And I guess the main people that have definitely pushed me towards this is Simon, which is the CEO or co-founder of Access VFX, an amazing person who has reached out to me on a couple of occasions in order to support Access VFX. So, as I mentioned, Access VFX is a platform that promotes inclusivity and diversity within visual effects and offers mentorships. And they have a Q&A platform as well, which is like really amazing, especially if you just have like a generic question. It would have been great for me when I was getting into the industry to have access to VFX, of course, if I was aware of the platform at the time. And how did I happen to do podcasts, I guess? Um, it's just networking, really. I think when people say networking is your net worth, I guess is somewhat true. I guess I wasn't necessarily like a big advocate of that phrase, but I guess I've eaten my own words on several occasions. Um, so yeah, it's definitely just networking, keeping close eye on the people that you admire. That sounds very stalkerish, but I recommend it. If there's anyone out there that you think is a great person or you'd love to work with in the future, keep an eye on them. Follow them on LinkedIn. Maybe not in real life. Don't do that. But
Don't stalk them.
fol-
Yeah.
follow them on LinkedIn. Keep
Hmm.
an eye on the projects they're working on, and put yourself in positions where your paths could cross, and reach out to them.
Yeah.
Definitely, I've had so many people reach out to me on LinkedIn just to have a catch up. I'm more than happy to have a catch up with anyone that wants to ask any amount of questions. I've talked to so many people, and I've reached out to so many people as well. And it's great to just advance your network. And that's essentially how I ended up in great conversations with Simon. He saw a lot of the stuff I was doing that I was posting on LinkedIn, um, and just reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think this would be a great idea."
Hmm.
And then the same with the panels, really.
And when it comes to public speaking, it's something that a lot of people are terrified of. So, do you feel
Yeah.
comfortable doing this?
Yeah, I've heard that people feel terrified of it. I honestly, it never really crossed my mind that it was a terrifying thing. It
Hmm.
genuinely comes very naturally to me. I love to is something I really enjoy doing. I get a sense of fulfillment once completed. And from this conversation, I would probably say it probably comes from my performing days when I was quite young, doing like dance and acting and
Hmm.
all those type of things, where I guess I became naturally accustomed to being on a stage and talking. So I remember tons of occasions where I was just like the only person on the stage and just talking. So I guess I became accustomed to it, so I don't necessarily have that fear of it. Um, and I enjoy just having conversations with people, unlocking new things and getting new insights, and having people see that they're not the only person out there that's just trying.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like you never know when we discussed your kind of career in front of camera before, that you
Yes.
could have gone that way, that it will be helpful in a
Yeah.
future like this. Hmm.
No, exactly. And I guess sometimes you need to hear that that sometimes the things that you do aren't just a waste of time. Nothing's a waste of time.
Hmm.
Everything, I guess there's a reason for everything. I know people say that, and sometimes I just feel like it's an excuse just for being able to just dismiss things. But sometimes there is a little bit of a reason for everything, and sometimes you just have to find the reason
Hmm.
and utilize it.
Yeah. And when there is such a public speaking, what is it that you talk about? Is it your experience, your career, your journey?
Yeah, so essentially a lot of what we spoke about today, I would say my experience for one, my experience being working in project management, my experience working in visual effects, what visual effects is like, what visual effects is, and yeah, just that. My journey in terms of how I got into visual effects in the first place, and how ended up in this role, um, and dare I say, for in a shorter time span than necessarily anticipated.
Hmm.
So I do speak a lot about dedication, motivation, encouragement, and just essentially achieving your goals and your dreams. Because I'm a big advocate in no dream is too big, as long as you apply yourself. But you need to know how to apply yourself in the right ways.
Hmm.
And I guess my knack of project management has allowed me to figure out how to apply myself and pursue certain things. And I essentially just talk about that. I give a lot of encouragement and just motivation.
Hmm. Yeah. So it sounds it's something you are passionate about, and you plan to continue with this, right? To
Oh yeah, definitely so.
empower people, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's quite important. I think, um, yeah, dreams are important to have, and sometimes we get quite discouraged and we kind of just let things wander off into the distance. And I think it's just important to recognize your own goals and realize that you are the only person that is in charge of your own goals, and you are the only person that can achieve them. But you just need to know how to apply yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the hard step. So I do one-to-ones with a lot of people and talking about how to apply yourself, and people do reach out to me talking about they struggle and
Hmm.
what their struggles are with, and I generally give that sort of support and encouragement, and I'm open ears at all times.
Hmm. And do you speak somewhere regularly, or does it depend when there is some kind of event and then you speak there?
Yeah, I speak in events at the moment. I'm open to regular occurrences. I would definitely love to have a regular occurrence to speak with.
Hmm.
But it's more so events. Additionally, I do work with another platform called Women in Visual Effects. There's a Discord channel and some LinkedIn groups and social media pages where we essentially have a bunch of conversations about different demographics of different scenarios
Hmm.
of working in visual effects. As well as that, I will shortly be organizing and hosting a panel
Oh,
slash
nice.
panels per se for women in visual effects.
Hmm.
So definitely look out for that. It should be hopefully soon posting on my LinkedIn pages and social media pages. Um, yeah, just need to cross some T's and dot some I's. So we shall see.
So, what are the social media channels that people should follow you if they, want to reach out or even to attend some of
Yeah,
your
of
events?
course. I would say mostly LinkedIn, 100% LinkedIn. I unfortunately I'm an avid disliker of any other form of social media. I don't use Instagram. I don't use Facebook. I don't use Snapchat. I don't use anything apart from LinkedIn.
Why is that?
So, I, it is incredibly bad for my mental health. I cannot deal with social media.
Mhm.
I try for periods of time and I just realize I immediately notice the negative implications that it has. I constantly find myself comparing myself and where I am in life. And it's especially weird because I come into these scenarios where everyone's like, oh, like, well done, that you've had such small, little achievements and these are great. And then I go on social media and these achievements basically feel like nothing. Um, and it's just, yeah, I'm not in a position where I can personally handle the comparison.
Mhm.
And it's probably something that I have to grow and learn to eradicate myself from and potentially not allow my ego to see it as a competition.
Yeah, yeah.
But for now, I'm aware of the implications that it has, and I've just decided to take a step back and I just don't use it. And in all honesty, another reason is because I find that social media creates your personality for you,
Mhm.
meaning that you absorb all this content and you somewhat become a person that Instagram wants you to be, as opposed to the person that you potentially are.
Yeah.
And I found myself having certain likes because I saw it, and only
Mhm.
wanting to wear certain things because I saw it.
Yeah.
And it sort of made me question, is this actually me? Do I actually like wearing this? Do I actually like this? Or am I just seeing it so it's appealing? So yeah, and now I no longer use it and I love it.
Actually, sounds like a good idea to think about. We'll need to reflect on this as well.
Yeah, but it has its pros. I think social media definitely has its pros, especially when networking. I think
Mhm.
it's good to have a page at the very least. Maybe if you're not active on it, but somewhere where people can contact you,
Mhm.
um, is definitely important. I think, yeah, but I just don't have anything, so
Yeah.
maybe do a little bit better than me.
And with this, with your work and this
Yeah.
helping stuff like speaking and this, do you have maybe some hobby that helps you to switch off that, or that you do on a side that is completely unrelated and helps you to recharge?
Yes. So again, I think my brain is purely production orientated. I'm very like analytical and everything has to be planned out and thought out. So I have this like giant pinboard like right here, funny enough. And I have a small paper and I have about 10 activities that I can do if I want to unwind, which includes going to the gym,
Mhm.
taking a walk, stretching, reading, a hands-on activity, journaling, or meditation. So
Oh, nice.
I
Yeah.
have to do at least one of those things every day, at least,
Hmm.
um, or else I feel like my life is falling apart for some unknown reason. But that's not true. Um, I just think it's important to do at least one of those things just for a healthy either body, a healthy mind, and just healthy living, really. So yeah, any of those.
Hmm. And you mentioned reading. Do you want to give some quick tips, favorite books or what to read?
Reading, yes. I've been trying to get back into reading. I used to be such an avid reader. I'd say before, even during university, I'd say before working simply. And I'm trying to get back into it. I can say the latest book that I read was called The Fifth Sally, which I thought was really, really cool. It's about a young lady who has a multiple personality disorder. So if anyone's seen like the movie Split, where they
Mm.
have like multiple personalities living within one body, and it essentially gives the direct point of view of her life and how it affects her. It is a fiction book, but it's based on real life research. So I found that really interesting and it's quite enticing, especially the conflict of the different personalities. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the film. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So maybe a good tip for people who like it as well.
Yeah, I think if you like the book, you're definitely if you liked that film, I think you definitely enjoy the book.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I feel like split personality is quite a not a simple subject to understand, but it's a one-sided subject. So if you like this, you probably like that.
Yeah,
So.
makes sense. Cool. As we are a bit over hour, is there something that you would like to share, to add, something I forgot to ask you?
No, of course. I think you covered everything. I've really enjoyed being here and talking to you today, so I appreciate you having me. And I guess for any listeners that again do want to contact me, LinkedIn is probably the best place. Even my friends now have started to text me on LinkedIn as opposed to actually texting me. So if you want to grab me and if you want to find me, it would just be Alisha Huxtable. You can give me a Google; it should come up. And yeah, thank you, Thomas. You have really, really, really enjoy your content and enjoy what you're doing. Oh, and I think one thing that we should mention is that we did work together previously.
We did, and it
I
was
think that would
on
be
F10, the film you
yes,
mentioned.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that should definitely be mentioned because he was amazing to work with, and we worked on another show briefly together as well.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you was a great person to work with, and I miss working with you, but I'm happy to see you onto like amazing and better things, and I wish you absolutely the best for the future as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm the one who's grateful that you joined me. I thank you for your kind words, for working together. I enjoyed it as well, especially on F10 because it was my first big project, so it will be always in my heart. And yeah, I think you shared some great wisdom. I'm really glad for what you do when it comes to this public speaking stuff, because that's something I didn't know as much before. I will be happy to provide the links, share it in the future so that people can attend and support it, because it's amazing what you're doing. And the same, thank you again, and I wish you good luck in your career as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, get in touch to provide your feedback, or share any ideas for future guests. Thank you and see you soon.